Hey, welcome into Texans on Tap. I'm Brandon Strange alongside Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. You can follow them on X at Palillo and at Josh Jordan SCS. Charlie, Josh, welcome in. Before we get going, make sure you guys hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click that bell for notifications so you know when new content drops. Especially during the off season, and what an interesting off season it's going to be. An incredible run for the Texans falls tragically short in New England. The odds were not in their favor. No Nico. We found out no Trent Brown. Schultz goes down in the first quarter with a calf. Stover ends up going down in the fourth. But by that point, it felt like the hole had been adequately dug. The story of this game, though, and probably the offseason, will unfortunately be the performance and the future of CJ Stroud, who throws 4 interceptions in the first half. One of the worst pick sixes you'll probably ever see in a game, much less in a playoff game. It was a bad day for CJ and CJ enthusiasts. Charlie, in fairness, nothing was going right on offense for the Texans, for the shorthanded O-line, only getting 8 rushing yards in the first half. But the decision-making for the third-year Stroud surely gives you pause about his future.
Well, we have talked at times about, is this a guy who has demonstrated you want to commit $55 million plus per year to, a la Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, and others in this follow the leader silliness game of overpaying quarterbacks, but focusing with the most recent CJ Stroud. Okay, choke job does not apply, because I don't think you can choke from basically your first throw of the game. And CJ Stroud was pathetic from the first throw of the game. And we'll hear about how he hit his finger on a helmet. If he was compromised that badly, then D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caley for refusing to even make a move. Laura Rutledge should have asked at halftime any contemplation of quarterback change instead of what does it take to get CJ Stroud going? Because the answer to that in this game turned out to be a miracle, which was not in the offing. But even if his hand was damaged, Brandon, you alluded to it, the decision-making was sub-amateurish. You would have given a stern talking to Pee Wee League quarterbacks if you throw an interception, just a pop fly under pressure. Well, let me get rid of the hot potato. He was wildly inaccurate. That can happen. Wet ball, wind, whatever. It's not as if Drake May was covered in glory in this game. But CJ Stroud was relentlessly incompetent. So I'm taking choke job off the table. But for this game, this one's for you, Brandon. Colossal jabroni! CJ Stroud, he was quarterback rating, QBR, whatever numbers you want to go with, they will be microscopic in terms of describing the positivity. The defense was not phenomenal in this game, and we'll get there. But look, the storyline is 4 first half interceptions. A couple of them weren't specifically pathetic, but you know what? He threw multiple other balls that could have been interceptions. This was from Jump Street, just a pathetic quarterback performance.
Yeah, he was awful. And I feel like he was pretty awful against the Steelers too. It's they pulled that game out, but we talked about it last week. It was 7-6 going into the fourth quarter. It was the defense that put those touchdowns up. And I felt like I was pretty critical of CJ, but I noticed a lot of people last week that seemed to be giving him a pass and being like, oh, but he made so many great throws too, even with the poor throws. And he wasn't that bad. He wasn't. Not compared to this week. My God, was he awful. Look at the stats. Look at whatever you want. Charlie's right. I tweeted out in the first quarter, I'm like, I see 3 near picks and 1 official pick of CJ. I mean, we were just into like the first quarter and he'd already have 4 balls that could have been intercepted. He was awful, but he wasn't the only one. Xavier Hutchinson was terrible in this game. He batted that ball up in the air. He dropped that deep shot at the very end of the game. And I also got to ask the Texans, like, what was the plan? Like, Xavier Hutchinson had 13 targets in this game, 13-6 for Christian Kirk. Why was he the go-to guy with Nico Collins being out? This should have been Higgins. This should have been Knoll. That's why you drafted those guys high. And then you go to Hutchinson, and he had 4 for 44. He batted that one up in the air, had some drops. And he almost had another one, but they called him down. Remember, he had that ball ripped out of his hand. That if he wasn't down by contact, that would have been another one. but it was everybody. Like CJ was awful. He's the story. We're going to talk about this all off season. I don't know what you're going to do with him, but it started off with Christian Kirk dropping that first down on the first drive of the game. Woody Marks fumbling in the red zone. I mean, there was mistakes to go all the way around for the offense. They were just terrible today. And then you're right, Brandon, you lose Schultz. You come into the game without Nico. But there should have been other options. Jalen Noel had one target, no catches in this game. You needed some explosive plays, and you didn't even give him the ball. That's inexcusable to me.
Hutchinson's the underneath guy who becomes that safety valve look, I think, for Stroud, especially in the absence of Dalton Schultz. No one rolls coverage, whereas Christian Kirk, everyone knows that he's the one deep threat guy, with Noel really not a factor in the offense. So, yes, there is blame to spread. I mean, Woody Marks, that was a devastating fumble. You're inside the 15-yard line, down 21-13 when he coughs that ball up. Well, the defense forces a quick 3 and out. You get the ball, you convert for a field goal. You're in a 21-16 game. And then the defense cracks. Stingley on a 3rd and 8, pretty clear pass interference call. He gets beat for the touchdown, but that one was more Drake May's one stupendous throw of the day. And Booty with a catch that will be legendary in Patriots history if they go on to the Super Bowl, heaven forbid, win another Super Bowl. Just a spectacular play. Stingley was beaten, but that was more tip your cat or doff your helmet to the other team. Trent Brown had not morphed into the greatest right tackle in NFL history, so his absence should not have just completely debilitated the run game, but this was the worst of Texans running the football, 2025. Marks 9 carries for 3 yards in the first half, but then got it going for 5 carries for 14 yards in the second half. It was an offensive snuff film, largely in this game for the Texans. They had 3 possessions start in Patriots territory. They managed to score a touchdown when they got it at the 27-yard line. The other 2 ended in turnovers, interception, and then the Marks fumble. So in the end, while the Patriots coughed it up themselves and the bounces of the ball, and the Texans got plenty of them this year, factoring into them being plus 17 in the giveaway takeaway ratio. But May putting it on the ground 3 times, twice the Patriots were able to recover. I mean, Anderson and Hunter combined for 5 sacks, each with a strip sack in the game. If we knew just that factoid coming in, you'd be thinking the Texans have finally made it to the AFC Championship game. But as in their divisional road game history, in the end, they didn't come close to winning.
Yeah, we'll talk about how maybe the Texans could have dug themselves out of a hole, Charlie. But if someone's looking to dig themselves a hole in their backyard, who would you recommend that they go look for a tractor or heavy equipment to buy from here?
Well, Alvin Equipment would be the choice there. Coincidentally enough, been in business since 1952, a 3rd-generation family-owned business featuring the line of Kubota products, from tractors and zero-turn mowers to compact track loaders and excavators. If it's a Kubota, Alvin Equipment has it. They're also easily found right off Highway 6 on the south side of town. They're also an easy call at 281-331-3177. Let's also note full service department and full parts department. That's Alvin Equipment online, easily enough remembered. It's their name, alvinequipment.com.
All right, so Texans go into the half, and obviously, as I mentioned, Stroud had already given it up 4 times in the first half. You know, look, I'm Josh, I'm with you about the Stroud apologists. I called them enthusiasts when we jumped on because I was trying to be diplomatic here. But, and look, I'll take my medicine. When I predicted this game, I thought there was absolutely no way that Stroud could be as bad as he was in Pittsburgh. Well, he wasn't. He was worse. And it was a nightmare because no one wanted him out. Like, they needed him to perform because there was 0 run game. There was 0 strategy outside of just trying to go up the A gap or have Stroud make something happen. Stroud was deer in the headlights. He did not want to be out there, given that he was the only option for them. Body language was terrible. So let me ask you this. Big debate at halftime I saw on social media was whether you put Davis Mills in this game. I'll say I'm not for it, but how do you guys come out on this? Do you think you putting Davis Mills in and see what you have in the second half?
I mean, obviously, D'Amico decided that's not what they wanted to do. And it's also possible maybe they had a conversation like, let's see how CJ looks on this first drive. And if it's god awful, we'll get him out of there. But look, obviously, we know how CJ didn't play much better. I don't think Davis Mills is the type of guy that's going to lead you back either. So I was kind of on the fence. But CJ deserved to be benched by the way he was playing and the way he was putting the football in jeopardy. I mean, just those throws are just throwing it up in the air. Just, man, what are you doing? Throw it into the ground and move on to the next play. He was trying to do too much. At this point, it doesn't really matter. I'm like, Davis Mills couldn't have come in and stunk up the joint any more than CJ was already doing it. So to me, I'm just like, I don't know if it would have mattered either way. I don't think the Texans were going to come through here. And for me, it's also like that first drive where you get that touchdown wiped away because you have two guys moving at the same time. The Texans have had these terrible red zone issues all season long. So one of their answers is to bring in a defensive player to play offense. And of course he's moving and then you wipe off the touchdown. I'm just like, if you can't figure this out with your offensive players playing clean football, that you're going to bring guys in from the defense too. I think they're getting too cute. I thought Nick Caley screwed up too. It wasn't just on CJ. They were having a little bit of success for a short time running the ball with Nick Chubb. And CJ's just getting killed, dropping back. Mix in the run a little bit more. I didn't think that they did CJ any favors either, even though no excuses. That's one of the worst football games I've ever seen a quarterback play in the playoffs.
I understand any and all clamor at halftime among friends, enemies. My wife was leading the charge, and she knows her stuff, but it wasn't obligatory. It wasn't stupid for D'Amico Ryans to not make the switch at that point, in my view, at least, because the game was not out of touch. As you allude to, you want to at least see if he throws a pick, a lousy decision early in the third quarter. Now, granted, his first throw of the third quarter, he bounced it toward Jaden Higgins, but it wasn't the brain dead decision making that he was guilty of on multiple occasions in the first half. And while CJ Stroud has proven quite clearly he's not an elite quarterback, you're not going to pull your no-brainer number one for Davis Mills. And I know they went undefeated in his starts, and other than the third snap against Jacksonville, what did Davis Mills do while he was in for Stroud? He protected the ball. No turnovers in basically 3 full games. But you're just not going to bench your clear number one. I doubt it factored into D'Amico's thinking at all at halftime. Well, if we make the switch and heaven forbid Davis Mills plays well, do I have a full-blown controversy with my quarterback going to the offseason? No, it was made about what he thought was in their better interests to win the game. The Patriots defense is just better than the Texans offense. Coming into this game, the Patriots, whatever was to be made of their strength of schedule. Look, they started the season 1-2. Since then, they're 15-1. The only loss, they built a 21-point lead against Buffalo. They blew it. But the Patriots are really good, both sides of the ball. The Texans are good on one side of the ball. The defense is stout as all get out. The offense all season long was a mediocrity, majority of the season, on the underside of the middle of the league, and then a couple of blowout wins late, that they wind up 13th or whatever in scoring. But this at no point was what you would consider a juggernaut offense. The most important player in the sport is the quarterback, and CJ Stroud's a second-tier guy at this point. Is there still room for growth? Possibly, but it's fair to question. He does not have an elite arm. He's not an elite athlete. And since we're on so quickly after the game, I don't know if he went Josh Allen, was all teary and bubbly and booing and that in his post-game press conference, but he should have been, because that's one he's going to have to carry for quite a while. And so the Texans remain the only existing NFL franchise to never reach a conference championship game.
Yeah, boy. And I mean, we don't want to assume anything, but the path to the Super Bowl sure looked like a wide open one this year because of what happened at the end of that Denver game. Look, I I want to go back to CJ just to put a bow on this, because I said before I tossed you guys the question, I said no. I'll tell you why, which is I think it's important that you see what you have with CJ. I think it's more important, quite frankly, than a single win in the postseason. And I understand the argument, and I don't begrudge anyone the argument to say it's more important to win this single game and not waste this generational defensive unit that the Texans have. So I completely understand that argument, but I need to see what CJ Stroud is. And I think, look, unless a bolt of lightning happens next season, I think I know what CJ is now. And I think I'm comfortable saying that I'm not worried about the window of a cheap quarterback, having CJ on the cheap, because I have zero interest in having CJ as an expensive, highly paid quarterback on this team. You can read into that what you may, and obviously we have a ways to get there, but we need to flip to the defensive side of things, because the defense, Charlie, as you said, was not perfect, but my goodness, they tried their very, very best to keep this team in this game. So many times turnovers led to 3 and outs. This Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter all over, Tommy Togiai with some amazing tackles. I guess just give me your general impressions for the disappointing end to this defensive unit that had just become so much fun to watch.
The defense was pretty good in the game, but just not close to great. Exhaustion, a non-factor. The Patriots had so many 3 and outs in the game, 5, plus another at the end of the half where they threw a Hail Mary on 4th down because it was the last play of the half that gave the Texans another takeaway. So when the Patriots obviously were going to play ball control and run it down the throat and make you burn your timeouts, and the Texans couldn't stop them, right? 6-minute possession. They gave up touchdown drives of 66 and 56 yards. They weren't long, taxing, wear you out. Oh, the defense has been on the field the whole game drives. There's a 6-play, 66-yard drive and a 5-play, 56-yard drive. I mean, they got gashed by multiple big plays in the game. So, unfortunately, for those they're the 85 Bears defensively. They're the 2000 Ravens defensively. No, they're not. They're just a really good defense. As it turns out, it looks like the second best defense in the NFL. See Seahawks, Seattle, for what's looking like number 1 at this point. But a unit that was Super Bowl contending caliber, no question about it. They did not deliver their finest hour against the Patriots, but they also weren't given a fair chance to be heroic and carry the team to victory.
Yeah, I think there was so much pressure on the defense, right? Because like Danielle Hunter, if you just fall on that fumble and then they don't have to punt, then you're right there in the red zone. And maybe that changes. That they forced so many fumbles, but they just couldn't get on top of them. Sometimes that's luck. Sometimes I think with Danielle Hunter, he saw the scoop and score from last week, and that was in his mind. So he went to do that, and then he second guessed himself and went to fall on it. And by the time he did, it was over. But everybody kind of struggled on the defense too. In certain, like Kalen Bullock, he did deflect that ball to Pop Douglas on that first touchdown, but he didn't get enough of it, and he fell down. So he scampered and got the touchdown. Lassiter got beat by Booty a few times. So did Stingley, we saw. So those guys didn't have their best games either. And like you can't expect them to be lights out every week. It'd be nice if the offense would do something. So I'm not going to be too critical of them. And it was a great one-handed catch that I think the ball moved when it hit the ground, but they just didn't have enough to overturn it on that Booty one-handed grab. But either way, the Texans, they didn't play well enough to win this game. It wasn't all that close after a little while. You just got that terrible feeling, just like, oh man, this is going to be it again. It's just, the Texans can't get over the hump. And as you alluded to, this was the clearest path to a Super Bowl. If you could get past the Patriots, going to play a backup quarterback in Denver. But who knows? We know they pretty much got stomped by the Seahawks anyway early in the season. Maybe that would have happened should they have made it. But yeah, the defense wasn't great, but Will Anderson was good. Hunter was good. I thought the pass rush was great. They were giving him fits, but it just wasn't enough. And just the morale, just seeing how CJ's just turning over the ball and the way his body language was too. You couldn't feel that great about it if you were a Texans player. Like, how are we going to come up with anything? And this is also the other trend. Nico Collins never seems to be available when the Texans play their most important games. he's just always dealing with a concussion. And remember last year, he took that shot to the ribs, and he played in that Chiefs game, but he wasn't himself for a lot of the games. I think there's maybe a book out on him, like rough up Nico, and you can get him off the field. So I think they're going to see more of that. And some of it's just bad luck, but CJ's not the same without Nico Collins to throw to. And then you take away Dalton Schultz as well, and then have a running game that gave you absolutely nothing. They really didn't have a chance just after the first 10 minutes of the game. And I know they started to come back, and CJ threw that touchdown to Christian Kirk, but that ball was behind him as well. That's my problem with CJ. Not only just the awful decision-making and the bad weather, but so inaccurate. Just so many passes were behind the guy or in the dirt or overthrowing him. The guy that's supposed to be the ball placement specialist. What was that today?
For any whiners or CJ bootlickers or just straight CJ fans, you guys are just too hard on the guy. One, grow up. This isn't a pom-pom show. Two, take it from Troy Aikman, who late in the fourth quarter covered that CJ Stroud's rookie season was marvelous for 2 seasons now under 2 different offensive coordinators. I believe he used the phrase he's been chasing the success of his rookie season. He just has not been nearly as good a player. And it's difficult to envision the Texans defense being better in the 2026 season than it was in 2025. So where is there ample room for improvement? The offensive side of the ball of most import CJ's level of play, but the offensive line still needs some polishing up. And in the end, the best running back on the field in this game was Ramondre Stevenson. Going forward, no one would take Woody Marks over Travion Henderson. And with no Nico Collins, the 2 best wide receivers on the field, Booty, just on the strength of that one catch alone, would make the cut. And while it wasn't a rancorous departure from the Texans, Stephon Diggs, if he's into victory cigars, I'm sure he was puffing quite happily in the Patriots locker room after his showing and the obvious outcome.
And I thought Nick Caley deserves some of this too. Texans, when have we seen this before? Having to call timeouts because you're not getting the play in quick enough. We've seen that all year long. We've seen the penalties in the red zone. All that stuff popped up again today. And you needed those timeouts at the end of the game because you needed to get off the field and have another chance on offense. But it's been like that all season long. It is not a clean operation. Guys don't know about getting set right. And how many times do we see 2 guys in motion over the course of the season? That keeps happening over and over again.
The first time out was absurd. After a running play on 2nd and 2 that gains no yards, 3rd and 2, you're in the red zone, not being able to get a play off. And I think it was 8-9 seconds on the play clock where CJ and everyone else is just standing there in a huddle. Oh, we're going to have to use a timeout here. How about some sense of urgency? The second one, I'll cut a little slack. It was the deep incompletion to Higgins. That 40-second clock starts quickly. You will see sometimes teams struggle when it's a wide receiver way downfield to just get back and into the huddle in the play call. Well, the coaching staff should be aware of that. Sub out the wide receiver so the operation is moving. Good point. Game management, clock management, not a strength of the Texans overall.
Yeah. Josh, I want to piggyback on what you said because the body language on Stroud was bad. We talked about it. It's not leadership material to go moping around. And I know it's easy for me to say on the sidelines here, there's just some guy on YouTube, but that's his literal job. And I'll see your Nick Caley should get some of this and raise you a Nick Caserio can get some of this as well, because this whole underperforming O-line, very marginal run game is not new. That's not something that just happened this year or even this game. I know they were down Trent Brown here, but I don't think Trent Brown's the difference between this being a competent run game on Sunday versus not. These are just the same old problems that we've seen rehashed. Nick uses a draft pick on a guy like Jalen Noel, who can't see the field much as a receiver, makes very little impact as a kick returner. What are you doing? You need so much help on your O-line. You do very little to address it. And here they are suffering from the same symptoms, the same illness that we've seen year after year. Charlie, I doubt that he would be, but should Nick Caserio feel a little bit pressure? Should he be on the hot seat given the fact this is the 3rd straight year they've been bounced out of the 2nd round?
In terms of the idea of any change, no. But you can plateau, which can grow old. They went 12-5 this season. So their best record in the D'Amico Caserio era. In the end, though, they get bounced at their usual point, divisional round. And as I said earlier, divisional round and don't come close to winning the game. But they did win 12 in a division where Jacksonville just happened to be good enough to win 13. But hey, Jacksonville lost at home. The Texans did crack one glass ceiling of winning a playoff road game for the first time. But if next season they backslide to, say, 10-7, whether they win the division, if they check out in the divisional round, and we're lathering, rinsing, and repeating on questions about C.J. Stroud and the offensive line, then I think it becomes fair. Stroud's still cheap next season, under $12 million on the cap. They're going to exercise the fifth-year option, which will double his salary to near the $25 million level. After season 3, generally is when those mega dollar extensions get done. I would consider the Texans foolhardy if they go there with C.J. Stroud, not just off the performance against the Patriots, but the body of work the last 2 seasons. I don't think he's on some inevitable arc to be a top 5 quarterback that you're saying, well, of course, check that box and give him the $55-60 million as the cap goes up and up. He is not Joe Burrow quality, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Dog eat dog world. I doubt CJ and his representation will say, you're right. We'll do $35-40 million to enable you to continue to pour resources elsewhere. Into other areas of the football team, O-line, wherever you want to go. But for anyone thinking, and if you want to say it's not a rush to judgment just off this game, but that CJ's not the guy he needs to go, you're going to have to deal with the fact that he is their guy and there's no chance that he's going to go, because what's the avenue? You want to throw it all at Malik Willis in free agency? They're picking in the bottom 10 of the first round in an iffy quarterback draft. Of course, CJ Stroud's going to be their guy, and there's not going to be any competition between Stroud and Davis Mills heading into next season.
No, it won't, but we've seen it all year. It's just, you just needed CJ to be a game manager, and that's not a bad word when you have a defense like this, and he couldn't do it. What do you need with game managers? Well, they're kind of like Matt Schaub, right? He couldn't run very fast, so he needed a lot around him. He needed Arian Foster, and he needed Andre Johnson. They needed to be able to run the ball and play action, and CJ's in the same boat. He's not, like Charlie said, he's not elusive. He's not a fast guy. He can grab you a few yards every now and then, but that's not his strength. He needs a lot of stuff around him to be perfect. We were thinking he's a quarterback that could elevate and doesn't need all that. It's just not the case, at least not right now. He needs a great defense. He needs a run game. He needs play action and good play calling. And how many times this year did we see just offense couldn't do anything, just couldn't pick up? There was nothing easy in this offense, were just easy throws. Like you watch a Rams game or you'd watch the Lions, or, these offenses, they just pick up yards and they just churn like it's no problem. It never feels that way with the Texans. Everything feels so hard and so difficult. And I also noticed today with Hutchinson, a lot of these receivers, they had defenders draped all over them, even when they were making catches. And that's why they went out and drafted these receivers. They needed some guys that could get some separation. Because remember, last year was John Mechie and Hutchinson and all these guys that couldn't really get open. Well, you draft Higgins and you get Knoll and you bring in Christian Kirk, and didn't seem to make that big a difference. And Christian Kirk's looked pretty good the past couple of weeks, but you barely targeted him in this game. I'll have to look at the copy later to see if they were doing something to take him away after that big game against the Steelers, but he was almost a non-factor in this game outside of that touchdown. So I don't think they're going to change coordinators again, but this just doesn't look like a modern NFL offense. It shouldn't be this hard to pick up first downs. It's the modern NFL. All the penalties go your way. Throw the ball downfield. Maybe they'll throw a flag. They started doing it a little bit in this game, but it was too little too late. And they have to have some other answer, because rolling it back out with Kaylee and CJ, fans are not going to be excited about that going into next season. And Danielle Hunter's going to be another year older too, by the way.
We will be digging deeper the next couple of weeks, both sides of the ball, particularly with no game to preview, as it turns out, next week. But on the offensive line, in brief here, Caserio has addressed it. He's just been consistently ineffective in addressing it. Going back to Kenyon Green, his first round pick, total bust. Juice Scruggs can't get on the field. He was a second rounder. Blake Fisher's their sixth offensive lineman in jumbo formations. Otherwise, unless there are multiple injuries, he does not get on the field 2 seasons into his career. And in free agency, Laken Tomlinson, goner. Cam Robinson, goner. Trent Brown, a part-timer. And that we were better late in the year with Trent Brown. Good signing. Well, when you sign a 380-pound guy in his 30s with injury history, to count on him as a bulwark member of your offensive line is faulty. So obviously, Caserio's assembled and spent high draft picks and big free agent dollars. But hey, results are results. Phenomenal work on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, he's put the D in defense. He's also put the D as a grade in offense.
Yeah, I just look at the Colts, like Shane Steichen. You put any quarterback with him, and they pick up yards. That offense moves. Jonathan Taylor, they don't have to have an elite, Daniel Jones or whoever it is. Even Gardner Minshew was at least serviceable in that offense. The Texans don't have that. They don't have an offense where you can just kind of put anybody in there and they'll pick up yards. So they really need to look in the mirror here, because another year of this, something's got to change, but I just don't think it will. I don't think they're firing Kaylee, and CJ's not going anywhere.
No, and I think back to a conversation that we had earlier when we were talking about Mike McDaniels, and Josh, you were talking about like, man, that means we have to start all over with, a brand new play caller. But after seeing this game on Sunday, it was like, what does that even mean? Like, what are we giving up? What progress has been made here? See, one of the commenters here, Patrick, says, he goes, man, if you can't game manage with this defense, then who are you as a quarterback? Yeah. I think that's an excellent question to make. Good point, Patrick. And I don't want to just make this a CJ bash party here. I think you're entirely right. I think the play calling was suspect as well. The broadcast was calling out how predictable the offense was, because they were calling out how the cornerbacks, the defensive backs were just sitting in coverage because they didn't fear any of the go routes on the sides or anything. And then Josh, to your point, I feel apprehensive when they run a tush push. I feel like it's a struggle just to convert on a tush push when that's the most give me play that in the NFL now, because you can literally push from behind. So yeah, nothing's a given in this play calling scheme. And yeah, I do think there needs heavily some introspection, looking in the mirror and self-reflection here. Now, Charlie, as we're throwing dirt on the grave of the Texans of the 2025-2026 season, if someone's watching this and they want to move some dirt around, who would you suggest they call about that?
Alvin Equipment, about 75 years of proven performance there. Family owned since 1952. Kubota products is heavily featured at Alvin Equipment, the oldest Kubota dealer on the Texas Gulf Coast. So zero-turn mowers and track loaders, excavators, of course, tractors, all in inventory, low-rate financing available, full parts and service departments, all on campus, if you will, which is easily found right on Highway 6. In Alvin. You can call 281-331-3177. That's 281-331-3177. Online, it's their name, alvinequipment.com, and throw in you heard about them on Texans on Tap.
Indeed, we would appreciate that. So as we are throwing dirt on the grave, as I said, for this season, obviously we're going to have many conversations about this in the coming weeks here. And there's going to be plenty of opinions to be had, and I'm sure we're going to dig into this with surgical precision here. But as we look back at this and while the body's still warm, let's say, if I can be crude here, what do you think is the biggest need that has to be addressed this offseason for Houston?
Offensive line, as it's been a broken record for several years now. I just want to include, I would call this a good season, clearly not a great season, but they do make the NFL's final 8 for a third season in a row. It's not as if they're 6-11 and people should be fired left and right. They lost on the road at a team that went 14-3 in the regular season. Yeah, the easiest schedule in the league, still went 14-3. against it. A team that's lost one game in 4 months now, and one would think is going to wind up in the Super Bowl unless Jarrett Stidham has a hero turn at him for the Broncos next week. The offensive line, because I expect Caley to be back. Now, there is no salary cap on the coaching front, so if you really wanted to splurge on a Mike McDaniel, if you felt he was a fit and he doesn't get a head coaching gig following up his dismissal in Miami in this cycle, I wouldn't object to that, but I wouldn't call it moronic if you say, well, we see at least elements of progress and think that he can grow into the job, and with an offseason of upgrades on the offensive side of the ball. But it's O-line still for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that area, but for me, how about a stud running back? I mean, that's what helps the Colts with Jonathan Taylor. Breece Hall, I think, is a free agent after this year. There were talks about that the Texans might have had trade interest in him, and that didn't pan out. And we saw, like, Joe Mixon was a big part of this offense last season, and they missed him so much that I just improve the O-line, yes, but get a game-breaking stud running back. If you have to draft one in the first round, fine, whatever. Late in the first round, early second round, go get somebody that's a difference maker, somebody that defenses look at and they're like, man, we got to account for that guy. If he breaks loose, we're in trouble. So I think that's a big thing. Give CJ a running back that he can kind of, live off of. The defense is focused on him. We'll run some play action and just make CJ's life a little easier. But here's the one thing that worries me, and I see it in the comments that, quarterback is the biggest need. Is CJ fixable? Is this going to be in his head now going forward to where he just performs like this in big games? I don't know. Sometimes these psychological things, guys don't really recover from them. And remember, he wasn't very good in the Chargers game last season. They kind of got on track after that broken play, and he hit Hutchinson and they got some momentum going, but he wasn't great in that game. And we know he hasn't been good in the divisional game. So I'm just wondering, is this something CJ can overcome, or is this going to be the rest of his career? Big games, he turns the ball over and looks lost.
I don't think he has a ceiling of awesomeness, but that he can be a winning quarterback, better than a Trent Dilfer who won a Super Bowl, but a Brad Johnson type who won with the Buccaneers and their sensational defense back in 2002. That's well and good, but I don't think you can win with a guy at that level paying him $60 million, 20% or more of your salary cap. So tick-tock on that. But still just 25 years old. Sometimes you have to go swallow bitter pills multiply. No pain, no gain. Josh Allen still waiting to break through and get to a Super Bowl, and he was a big part of why the Bills lost in Denver. He's about to turn 30 years old. Of course, he's a proven MVP in the league. CJ Stroud is not. But I'm just saying, be mindful of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because if it's not CJ Stroud, you think Davis Mills is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback? And where are you going to get that guy? Just as it's tough to get a quote unquote franchise running back if you pick in 24th in the first round.
Yeah, no, I agree that I agree. You have to be measured in the response here. I do think it's about O-line, because Josh, you touched on something that we don't really even bring up much on this show just because it's kind of an afterthought, but the loss of Joe Mixon for the entire season, them being without him, and not that he was some sort of game breaker, and I don't think he would be necessarily the difference, but he gives you something a little different that you have. They've had to rely so heavily on a rookie because Chubb was basically nothing for most of the season, and so they've had to rely on Woody a lot. Woody's undersized. My goodness, did he take a ton of brutal looking hits on Sunday, and again goes to the sideline and once again is back in the game playing. Man, you just wonder how many hits can he take? Like, how many of those at that size can that man take before it's going to be too many? But yeah, they were being without Jim Mixon. I think that doesn't get talked about enough, just because they rolled off winning 12 games without him. So I think, the fact they were able
to. Is his career over, or does he have a rebound season at 30?
Right. Well, and is his Texans career over? I think that's another good question to ask as well. Let's go through some final thoughts before we're out the door here, guys.
Well, as I said, good season, not great. They still can't go any farther than the divisional round. But a 12-5 season's not bad, and winning a road playoff game against a Pittsburgh team that wasn't that good. But nevertheless, it does go into the official record for them. We're going to do player of the game, I suppose, appropriately. Will Anderson, for me, 3 sacks, just the relentlessness of the guy. 3 seasons into his career, if C.J. Stroud was as good a quarterback as Will Anderson is a pass rusher, the Texans will be playing next Sunday.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess, I'd have to go with Will Anderson too, or maybe Hunter, just to not be the same as you, Charlie. But you can't pick anybody from the offense, that's for sure. That was just awful. They got to get more playmakers, and they got to get better play design. And I think going to an offensive coordinator that had never been an offensive coordinator before. Bobby Slowick had never been an offensive coordinator before. Experience matters. Look what Sean Payton's doing with the Broncos, man. Don't tell me these play callers don't make a big difference, because they really do. And as much as we love the defense, because that's what the Texans are good at, it's an offensive league. All the penalties and everything is set up to give the offense the advantage. And the Texans, they have trouble exploiting that because they're a team that's strong on defense. So I don't know how you maintain this level of elite defense. You got to have balance. As much as we couldn't stand Bill O'Brien, he was right about complementary football. You're going to have this elite defense, but if your offense is going to go out there and just throw the ball up in the air and turn it over 4 or 5 times, you're not going to win any games. And just finally, I saw a lot of people complaining about how sloppy this game was and how all these teams need to work on ball security next year. And I'm just like, well, maybe if the game wasn't in a snowstorm, you wouldn't have 3 or 4 turnovers on each side of the ball. There's a reason the Super Bowl is not played in the elements anymore, because you get games that look like this. So as long as you're going to have teams like the Patriots to play outside, you're going to be in these ugly games with snow where the ball's going to get turned over. That's just part of the deal.
Be good enough to get home field advantage maybe one of these years for such a game. And let me also throw in on the way out, guys, credit to him for his performance, which was just outstanding all season long. Kaimi Fairbairn from 51 in the Elements Sunday. But it's not a good thing for a team when your place kicker ties the league record for field goals. Yeah. Touchdowns win big games, not field goals. Maybe a field goal at the end, but 7 overtime for all times. 7's better than 3.
I just want to address this comment because I think this is going to be a common theme here as we're into the postseason, or the offseason, I should say, which Rob says, y'all nitpicking everyone and everything like CJ didn't lost this effing game on his own. Well, but it's because he didn't. He did not lose this game on his own. Kalen Bullock got burned for a touchdown. Derek Stingley Jr. got burned for a touchdown. C.J. Stroud, as bad as he was, did not lose this game on his own. He had help. He did not do this team any favors, but he did not lose this game on his own. I think we all need to take a breath, understand that what actually happened in this game. I think there's going to be plenty of blame to go around. CJ is going to have to wear this. He's going to have to wear this off. Look, no one is going to be more hyper aware of the criticism of CJ Stroud than CJ Stroud. He's going to have to wear this all off season. And for as much of a tape nerd as he's made himself out to be, seems like he needs to consume some more tape. And for the decision-making as a whole, as we're talking about what does this team need more than anything, decision-making. I wish Nick Caserio was as intelligent as he thinks he is, because if he was, then this team would be in a much better situation. And maybe that's just, me being bitter after a tough loss, but I think the proof's in the pudding. I think there's a lot of things that have needed to be fixed on this team that still aren't. Good on them. I agree with Charlie with your assessment. This was a good, entertaining season. And I think furthermore, at 0-3, any single one of us would have taken a divisional round appearance if you give us the option of that, even if it meant another elimination from that round. So don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as you said, Charlie. Let's not throw out the enjoyment of the season. This was a really cool run towards the end. I'll give you the final word.
Just to be clear for the commenter and any and all who feel similarly, CJ Stroud damn sure was the unplayer of the game.
We'll leave it at that. We appreciate everyone. As much as we enjoyed this season, we enjoyed everyone who came in and consumed our product. And we want to thank Alvin Equipment as well for giving us our first inaugural sponsorship on Texans on Tap. We're not done for this season, or at least for the off season. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you haven't already subscribed to it, like this video if you haven't. And if you want to listen to a podcast, we're on all your favorite podcast apps. We're going to be breaking down both sides of the ball and things that need to be done during the offseason. We're going to be following any news in free agency and trade possibilities that are out there. So make sure you're following us for that. For Charlie and Josh, I'm Brennan saying so long. We'll talk to you next time. Go Texans.